So I want to talk about being simple and the benefits of it. That's an interesting word, isn't it? We talk about being simple-minded, not clever. I like to think about one thing at a time, work in simple ideas. Is that you? Is that what you think about yourself? It's not a very positive idea presented that way. Sometimes we'll say, look, I'm a simple soul, what's the message? And that can actually sometimes be code for, I don't really want to think, could you just lay it out for me? So it can actually sometimes be an excuse for a little bit of laziness. There's something alluring about being complex, about seeing and enjoying layers of meaning. That means you're smart, that means you're sophisticated. And in the Psalms, we read, the entrance of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. So if the Lord's light shines in our minds, then we will understand, and then we won't be simple anymore. Problem solved. It goes back to simple is bad, not being simple is good. But we're looking today at being simple as a praiseworthy quality, just like in the song we sang. And this not very smart, simple-minded idea is actually, to a certain extent, part of it. But it's really about something else, and that is not being double-minded and having an undivided mind. I'm going to read two passages from the work True Christian Religion about this. The church up to now has been almost totally ignorant of the fact that a person's every wish and thought, and consequently every action and utterance, has an internal and an external side. People are taught from childhood to speak in accordance with the external side, no matter how much the internal disagrees. This is the origin of pretense, insincerity, and hypocrisy. It follows from this that people are duplicitous. And the only person who is simple is one whose external thinks and speaks and wills and acts in accordance with the internal. It is these people who are meant in the word by the simple, although they are wiser than the duplicitous. So when we appear simple, we don't appear intelligent, but we're actually wiser. And I'm just going to preface some of the quotes that I'm going to be doing a little bit later to say that when I read a quote and it says simple, you may in your mind's ear say, oh, that's not what I usually say, because most translators don't like it when they see simple and they try to figure out some other way of saying it. So I'm translating a little more literally because it makes a point, that the Lord was trying to make. The second passage, also from the work True Christian Religion, all who have a conscience speak from the heart when they speak, and act from the heart when they act. For they have their minds undivided, speaking and doing according to what they understand and believe truth and good to be. So that undivided thing, that simple quality, all of a sudden is looking like a pretty stunning thing, isn't it? Speaking from the heart, acting from the heart. When you think about when you're being dishonest or greedy or critical, you can't let that out, can you? Or you'd have no friends. And so what you do is you do it selectively. When you're with gossipy friends, you can let loose with the critical thoughts. You can swear a blue streak at work, but maybe not out in the foyer. So there's that divided attention. Where am I? What can I let out? And the goal of our lives is to become single-minded. Simple. To have internal and external united. And this is why the Lord said, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is single, your whole body is full of light. No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon is wealth. You can't serve God and mammon. And the problem there is that when we try to serve them both, we try to externally serve God, but actually we're really in it for the money. And that's the problem with being double-minded, is that there are less good motives on the inside. Now here's another one that's even more challenging. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. That's kind of rough. Now the context of this teaching is the Lord had just been talking about lusting and committing adultery. So he's saying, if you're noticing that your eye is wandering, get rid of that wandering. Devote yourself to your spouse. Be single-minded in how you think about that part of your life. And I think the Lord said that in a very graphic way, because that's how it feels. It feels that hard to get rid of some of those qualities that we know we shouldn't have. So there's this image of single-mindedness, of monofocus. Now, there are times that we're double-minded in polite ways. I love the haircut. It's nice to meet you. No, it's fine to call this late. I'm fine. It would be nice to learn to be a little bit more sincere in some of those times, but that's not really what the Lord is talking about here. He's talking about lying, manipulating, or as the story said, lusting after someone other than one's spouse. So let me ask, where in your life do you tend to be sincere? Where do you tend to be single-minded? Where are you simple? And where are you double-minded? Where are you furtive, unlike Nathaniel in our story today? In the Epistle of James we read, a double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. I like that statement. We're designed to have united minds. All pretense, all deceit is inherently unstable. And in the 55th Psalm we read, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. Notice the bad stuff's on the inside again. His words were softer than oil, and yet they were drawn swords. But it's hard to maintain that, isn't it? The truth's going to out eventually, and you know this. When you're in a critical state of mind, other people pick it up. They don't sense that openness. Something I want you to notice about that first story. Behold, an Israelite who is without deceit. Well, guess what? The first way it showed up is him saying an unfairly critical thing. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And I think part of the message that the Lord was trying to get to here is that it is better to be uniting our mind to have a pattern of sincerity than it is to hide everything away until we get it just right, and then we can eventually be sincere at some later point in life. Because that very sincerity that Nathanael had allowed him to acknowledge the Lord just a couple minutes later. Now, one of the ways that we experience double-mindedness, all of us, is when we compel ourselves to do something that we don't feel like doing. When we make ourselves be nice and we don't feel like it. But that's not really duplicitous. Because now our inner self is choosing what is good and forcing our external to fall into line with it. And in some ways, that is the most deeply sincere that we ever are. Because we're choosing to say to someone, I will give you my full attention, even though there's a part of me that would rather be doing something else. That is a bigger gift of yourself, of your real, true self, than when it flows effortlessly, much as we would like that. So I want you to think about the story of the man with the demon-possessed son. He came to the Lord for healing, and the Lord said, if you can believe, all things are possible for him who believes. And immediately he cried out with tears, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. I'm not all the way there yet, but I intend to be there. That's what we do when we compel ourselves. And what I love about this is he wasn't pretending to be more than he was, but he was stating his intention. And this gets at this element of simplicity, of single-mindedness. Don't try to pretend to be more than you are. You know, like the Facebook threads that are nothing but glamour, but don't really reflect the whole person. You know, admit when you don't know something. Acknowledge perhaps more often than you do when you're sad. Acknowledge mistakes. That is part of that journey. And then show up with love as much as possible. Because here's the spiritual flaw when we hide things. We hide things from other people because we don't want to look bad or we don't want to impose on them. But that mindset leads to hiding things from ourselves, hiding the things that we need to work on. And that's dangerous. So being simple, single-minded, will get us farther quicker. We're told that the very best of the angels appear outwardly simple, but inwardly they are wise and prudent. So they choose to act from love and integrity from the inside out. They're not hiding anything. You know, I think that they would say, this is just little old me, nothing special. Yep, I made that mistake. But you know what? The Lord is special. And I'm going to do the best I can to do what he said. No pretense there. So I think that what the Lord is suggesting is that we seek to be more authentic, even when it means sometimes showing our flaws like Nathanael did. That's not saying we blast people or all of the things that our lowest self wants to do. But to be more authentic, let that inner self out more, to seek to be more single-minded. And then we become like those highest angels. The Lord said, be wise as serpents and simple as doves. And we think of those as opposites. But in the Lord's eyes, they're really the same thing. Amen.